There are some active things that teachers can do both in the classroom and in the school generally to help children who are looked after. One might be about changing the environment for the child. So for a child who particularly has experienced, say, relational trauma, they may need a teacher to be close by to them in the classroom in order to be able to ask questions about things they don't understand, for example. So thinking about that, whether that's helpful to a child to be sitting up front near the teacher, or whether that becomes more stigmatising, or whether it's easier for the child to not have to raise their hand to ask questions. Those are kind of environmental issues that teachers can think about. But there are also often social skills groups within schools or social communication skills groups within schools that children can be helped to access if they're going to try and build their relationships. And so I guess having a view of the child socially as well as academically and sort of psychologically is a big ask for a teacher, but actually really important to how they're going to be able to both develop emotionally but also to access the curriculum. Because if a child comes into school and has experienced some kind of early relational trauma, their ability to learn and to kind of trust other people is going to be severely hampered, if you like. And so anything that kind of helps increase their sense of trust in the teacher and their relationships in the classroom is going to help them both educationally and psychologically. One issue for all children is to not appear different from their peers and not to be stigmatised, not to stand out unless it's for a really positive reason. For looked after children, they already feel stigmatised. The fact that they're in care is different from their peers. Most of their peers will live with a birth parent and they don't. So they're already feeling different. So anything that happens on top of that to make their difference feel even more accentuated is going to be, extremely problematic for them. One example is children waiting for a taxi to take them home to their placement. If a taxi doesn't arrive on time or their friends have gone home, one thing that teachers could help with is by giving a safe place and a kind of comfortable place, a non-stigmatising place for the child to wait for their taxi, and then somebody from the school might be able to tell them that their taxi's arrived. That might be the library, it might be somewhere else that other children would hang out, and so it's not like a special corner, or they're not hanging around in a corridor. So these things are really important. Another issue that is often difficult if a child's experienced relational trauma in their early life, where they haven't had a sensitive parent or they haven't had a parent who's been responsive and kind of what we would talk about mentalised their own experience and help them understand emotions, is they may misread faces. So where a teacher might be thinking they're just being quite clear and giving instructions about a task, a child who's had early trauma may experience that as a really hostile face. They may feel that they're being told off, or they may feel that it's shaming to not know the answer to something because they've had an early experience, say, of being shamed by a parent. And it would be helpful for teachers then to be really clear with those children about what they're trying to communicate. So if their face doesn't communicate it clearly, they may need to add words to it and say, I'm just wanting you to complete this task now, or there's a reward at the end of this lesson, or I'm going to just be really clear with you about the instructions for this piece of work. And that may need to be presented visually as well as verbally, because there can be miscommunications. A teacher may be the most constant person throughout a child's, say, primary education or secondary education. And if they have a concern about a young person in their classroom, in their school, the really important thing is to feel that they've got a part to play in terms of telling the system around that child. So there'll be a social care system around every child who's looked after, and they hold the parental responsibility for that child. So a teacher, in telling social care and telling the child's social worker, is effectively like telling the parent. So if a teacher feels worried about either the mental health of that young person or the physical health or just the general emotional well-being, they should feel that they can tell a social worker, they could tell a foster carer, anybody who's in that child's system, that they have concerns. No matter how small, it might be that the child's being exceptionally quiet, or that they're suddenly exhibiting really difficult behaviour that's out of the norm of their normal pattern of behaviour. They shouldn't really feel they need to hold back, because there might not be a consistent carer who's known that child for so long as the teacher has to actually pick up on it, and they may be in a position of actually greater knowledge. Because most children who are in care will have had lots of changes. It might not have been a change in their caregiver necessarily, it might have been a change in their social worker, but in either case there's often unpredictable and not necessarily always wanted change in terms of the people that are in their system. It's really crucial that as far as possible a school can create if you like, a bolt hole that child can go to that might have a safe person named in it, whether that's their teacher, whether it's a classroom assistant, or whether it's someone responsible for pastoral care. There's a kind of regular person that the child knows will be there for them. And if a school can help identify that person for a looked after child early on and introduce that person to the child, that's an incredibly helpful thing for schools to do in order to keep that consistency and stability there as much as possible. For further information on this topic, if you'd like to go to the Schools in Mind webpage on our Anna Freud Centre website.